Qingque is Star Rail's most RNG DPS, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to play her like the insane quantum DPS that she is. First and foremost, Qingque is similar to Clara in the sense that her true potential is random and based on various factors. But the difference with Qingque is that her damage is reliant on a tile matching minigame that's fun the first time, not so much the other 1000. Now, aside from being one of Star Rail's funniest characters to play, she also boasts AoE and single target damage in addition to being quantum. These two alone make considering her a minimum. Let's get into it. When it comes to the Mahjong Queen, there's no better way to play her than by using Gacha's most primal instinct: gambling. In essence, Qingque draws tiles over and over and over until she matches a combo and is granted an enhanced attack. The difference for this bonus is changing from single target to AoE and increasing damage alongside it. This is the main damage source alongside her ultimate, and while it sounds very straightforward in theory, it is quite RNG in practice. And unless you have Eidolons to supplement the skill point usage, it will take God, praying, and a little bit of luck to dish out big damage. Qingque's saving grace, however, is that her ultimate grants an enhanced basic, so you do manage to have some semblance of consistency in her kit. Small disclaimer, there is a lot of debate over the exact rotation of when you should use her ultimate or if you should find a matching 4 tile first, but each scenario has its pros and cons. In one scenario, for instance, you wait to find 4 matching tiles and then use the enhanced attack and activate ultimate. This saves you skill points, which is nice for a high skill point consumer but lacks higher damage output. So long story short, match the tiles and use your ultimate as it comes up, but keep in mind that Qingque has great value from using her ultimate on her turn. Being able to pair her ultimate with supportive or damage buffs is huge. Think Donk, it's time to talk about Lightcones, and unfortunately or fortunately, this character is an erudition DPS. What that means is that Jingyuan's Lightcone before dawn is insane value as the best 5-star, whereas today is another peaceful day works great as a 4-star. The 4-star is great since Qingque's ultimate has a high energy cost and therefore converts to good damage. And since it is also obtainable through the Nameless Glory, there's decent value in selecting it and being able to receive it. Another decent 4-star you can select is the Seriousness of Breakfast, since the damage increase and stacking attack percent can be really useful in AoE encounters. When it comes to 5-stars, there really isn't any comparison between Himiko and Jingyuan, since there's a ridiculous amount of stat being given on one as opposed to the other. It's been about a month or so since Jingyuan came out, and I'm sure everyone is still kind of 50-50 on whether he was worth it or not, but there is simply no way you could argue over how ridiculous his Lightcone actually is. 36C damage, 18 increase to skill and ultimate damage, an additional 48% follow-up attack increase. Yeah, this is hands down the best Lightcone for erudition DPS, and it's clear why. Ultimately, what you have is always going to be what you're going to use, but this is a great way to start if you're Qingque build, assuming you have Jingyuan's Lightcone and aren't using it. As we move along to traces, it should be no surprise that maximizing a damage dealer's traces is mandatory. Qingque also benefits from every aspect of her trace tree with having quantum, attack percent, and great major traces. But nonetheless, this is great for a character who you want to be carrying your team in damage. In terms of priority for upgrading, it's tough to say since the stat increase from quantum and attack percent are significant, but the sheer increase in damage from upgrading your ultimate, basic, etc. will skyrocket your total output by a lot. With that in mind, upgrading any stats on the way to your major traces is perfectly fine. Qingque's basic is pretty important considering her game plan revolves around enhancing it and timing your ultimate to get enhanced basics, but upgrading any combination of skill, ultimate, and basic is still fine, assuming that inevitably everything ends up at +10. To be clear, I do understand that saying upgrade everything is a bit of a cop-out answer if someone asks what the most important upgrade for Qingque's kit is, but look at this, it all does damage. It all matters. Well, it's a quantum DPS, so guess what set works best for her? That's right, it's Genius of Brilliant Stars. And of course, while you can definitely use Musketeer, if you aren't farming for specific sets, there's just something magical about defense penetration that makes the quantum set so valuable. The something, of course, is doing big damage and being able to make use of the additional pen, since the enemy you would fight with Qingque is weak to quantum. But when it comes to planetary sets, look no further than the Space Sealing Station for great value and attack percent gain. At this point, damage dealers gain too much from Space Sealing Station to give up using it, but the newly teased sets that give crit rate and increased skill plus basic damage could be the new contender to be your best in slot. Since she herself is so reliant on basic plus skills to do damage, this would be a great overall damage increase, assuming the added crit rate is decent. But if we move away from the sets themselves and onto stat priority, Qingque is pretty cookie cutter. For chess, crit rate will likely end up being your main stat since Jingyuan's Lightcone provides insane crit damage. And for boot, the choice of speed or attack percent is dependent on having Bronya. Having an extra turn turn giver reduces the value of having higher speed as opposed to more impactful turns. But ultimately, it's fine either way. When it comes to her ornaments, Quantum as the orb and attack percent as a rope is standard as DPSs come. And if she were slightly more dependent on her ultimate cast, you could consider an energy regen rope. But that isn't really the case this time around, especially when the oomph of the ultimate damage is critical. In terms of substats, Qingque follows typical convention for DPSs, with having 1 crit per 2 crit damage and prioritizing attack and speed afterward. All in all, despite needing more strategy and planning in order to play her optimally, building her is pretty simple. Additionally, if you were an early Seela adopter, her gear overlaps relatively well with Qingque, so you could just swap sets. That being said, who would give up Seela for her? Now, luckily for anyone pulling on Luocha's banner, you do have the opportunity of receiving more Qingque copies. And even luckier, her Eidolons are pretty good. Aside from being a healthy balance between strong and worthwhile, they do actually enhance the experience of playing her. Coming in at E1, we have Rise Through the Tiles, which is just a flat ultimate damage increase. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but more damage, more fun. Her E2 gives 1 energy every time she draws a tile with her skill, which somewhat mitigates how much RNG she has in her kit, but it's really the 4th and 6th Eidolons that transform Qingque's quality of life and usability. While the 3rd and 5th are decent increases to damage, what really shakes things up is E4's autarky buff that grants a follow-up attack and bonus quantum damage, and the E6 skill point regeneration after using an enhanced basic attack. Let's be clear here, having E6 of any character is definitely not the expectation, but these Eidolons really do provide a ridiculous amount of value for a damage dealer. Simply put, having any or all of the Eidolons add a noticeable or significant increase in damage, playability, etc. Therefore, if you do manage to get a few copies, rejoice as you now have an increasingly more playable hyper-carry quantum DPS. After careful consideration of what characters mesh well with her, what playstyle to look for, and what is actually realistic to have built, I discovered a few common team compositions or outlines that you can use to play Qingque more efficiently. The first is an accessible team that isn't looking for solo DPS with 3 buffers, but rather a healer and a tank. This team composition utilizes Natasha, Qingque, Fire Trailblazer, and Tingyun or Asta should you have them. I know what you're all thinking, where's Bronya, where's Silverwolf? Well, all in due time, because the first composition is completely accessible the second you have the Fire Trailblazer, post Cocolia, and once you have Qingque. At this point, everyone knows the value of a breaker like Asta, and her speed and attack increases are no joke, so pairing her with a potential breaker alongside Qingque allows you a main DPS quantum carry while still having access to fire and support. The Trailblazer and Natasha act as your sword and shield, as they should, since they're just there to heal and protect, but more than that, these two are necessary so that you don't have to run back to a healing station every 2 seconds or feel vulnerable in battle. If we look more broadly, there are other team compositions that support Qingque once you have other 4 or 5 stars. Silverwolf, Qingque, Luocha, and Tingyun works well together as a team composition that doesn't consume too many skill points. Since Mahjong Lady can sometimes consume most, if not all, the skill points a team has, finding ways to be skill point neutral is very important. In Luocha, being able to forego using skills and relying on passive procs is just one of the several ways that this team shines. Tingyun, when built specifically to be skill point neutral, can also add to Qingque's damage while reducing the overall necessary skill points to function. And finally, though Silverwolf herself isn't the most skill point efficient, using her to provide defense and element reductions is great. In all honesty, what's actually really nice about this team is that the AI isn't too wonky or misdirected when I auto, so even when I need to take a break for a moment, I don't feel scammed out of efficiency. That being said, letting Qingque have attack and damage increases on a defense reduced enemy does sound pretty crazy, especially when I have no chance of dying with Luocha. Now, while I do genuinely like Qingque as a waifu, part of me does wish that she was a bit more consistent so that others can appreciate how fun of a character she is. However, it does really take away from the spirit of gacha to make her anything less than a coin flip character. In fairness to her kit and usability though, a lot of players can utilize her well so long as they're careful in how they build or plan out her game plan. And that's not even getting too deep into the efficiency of her damage per skill point and all that fun stuff. Anyways guys, I hope you learned a thing or two about Qingque today in my guide. If you have a moment, check out my Twitch, Discord, and Twitter to find out what nerdy or fun nonsense I'm up to. And as always, make sure to let me know what you liked or disliked about Qingque in the comments section, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.